Have you ever found yourself in a place where everything seems dark, uncertain, and overwhelming? Maybe you're walking through a difficult season right now, a valley so deep that you wonder if you'll ever make it out. You've prayed, you've cried, and yet the breakthrough seems far away. If that's where you are today, I want you to know something very important. God is with you in the valley. He hasn't abandoned you, He hasn't forgotten you, and He's not done with you. Life is full of mountaintop experiences, moments when everything is going well, when blessings seem to overflow and we feel God's presence clearly. But just as there are mountaintops, there are also valleys. These valleys represent the tough times, the struggles, the trials, and the moments of despair. But here's a truth we can hold on to. God is not only the God of the mountaintops, He is also the God of the valleys. His presence is with us, no matter how deep or dark those valleys may seem. Let's start by looking at a familiar passage from Psalm 23, one of the most beloved chapters in the Bible. In verse 4, David writes, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." David, a man after God's own heart, knew what it meant to walk through valleys. He faced battles, betrayal, and seasons of isolation. And yet he declared that even in the darkest valley, he would not fear because God was with him. David's words give us a powerful truth to cling to. The valley is not a place where God is absent. In fact, it is often in the valley that we come to experience His presence in the most profound ways. The valley may be a place of struggle, but it's also a place of growth, faith, and transformation. Think about it. If life were always easy, if we never faced trials or hardship, would we ever truly learn to depend on God? Would we ever experience His strength made perfect in our weakness? In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, the Apostle Paul shares a personal revelation saying, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Paul had his own thorn in the flesh, a valley he couldn't escape, but he found that God's grace was enough to sustain him. There is something about walking through the valley that teaches us to lean on God in ways we wouldn't on the mountaintop. In the valley, we learn to trust His promises. Even when we can't see the way forward, we learn to cling to His word, knowing that His truth will guide us through the darkest times. Now, you might be thinking, I hear you, but what does that look like practically? How do I hold on to God when I feel like I'm drowning in my circumstances? I want to encourage you with a story from the Old Testament. It's the story of Elijah, a powerful prophet of God who found himself in a deep valley of despair. In 1 Kings chapter 19, after witnessing a miraculous victory on Mount Carmel, where God showed His power by sending fire from heaven, Elijah was running for his life. Queen Jezebel had threatened to kill him, and Elijah, exhausted and afraid, fled into the wilderness. He reached a point where he sat under a tree and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Elijah was in a deep valley, a place of fear, exhaustion, and hopelessness. But what happened next is so significant. God didn't leave Elijah in that place. He didn't rebuke him for feeling weak or overwhelmed. Instead, God sent an angel to minister to Elijah. The angel provided food and water, telling Elijah to eat and regain his strength because the journey ahead was long. God didn't abandon Elijah in his valley of despair. He met him right where he was and gave him what he needed to keep going. And this is a powerful reminder for us today. God meets us in our valleys when we feel like we've reached the end of ourselves, when we're ready to give up. God comes alongside us and provides exactly what we need for the next step. He doesn't always remove the valley immediately, but He gives us the strength to walk through it. You see, the valley is not the end of your story. It may feel like a dead end, but it's actually a passage to something greater. Psalm 84 says, "Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on pilgrimage." As they pass through the valley of Baca, they make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also cover it with pools. They go from strength to strength till each appears before God in Zion. The Valley of Baca represents a place of weeping, but notice what happens. Those who trust in God turn that place of sorrow into a place of springs. They pass through the valley and go from strength to strength. Your valley is not meant to be your permanent dwelling place. It's a place you're passing through, and God is walking with you every step of the way. He's using this valley to grow your faith, to strengthen your character, and to prepare you for what's ahead. Let me share with you a true story that illustrates this point. There's a woman named Corrie ten Boom, a Dutch Christian who, along with her family, helped hide Jews from the Nazis during World War II. Eventually, she and her family were arrested and sent to a concentration camp. Corrie endured unimaginable suffering, losing her family members, enduring harsh conditions, and living in constant fear. But even in the darkest valley of that concentration camp, Corrie held on to her faith in God. She and her sister Betsy would secretly hold worship services in their barracks, reading the Bible by the dim light of a smuggled-in lamp. Despite the horror around them, they chose to focus on God. Betsy, who was frail and sick, once told Corrie, "There is no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still." That valley of suffering was brutal, but it didn't break Corrie's spirit. Instead, it strengthened her faith. After the war, Corrie traveled the world, sharing the message of God's love and forgiveness. She became a beacon of hope for millions, a living testimony that even in the darkest valleys, God's presence is there. Maybe you're in a place right now where it feels like everything is falling apart. Perhaps you're facing a diagnosis that's shaken you, or you've lost someone you love, or you're battling anxiety and depression. Whatever your valley looks like, remember this: God's love is deeper than your valley. He is with you, and He will see you through. Sometimes in the valley, we feel like we're walking alone, but the truth is, God promises to never leave us nor forsake us. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6 encourages us to be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. This is a promise we can hold on to in every season of life, especially in the valleys. Even when it feels like God is silent, He is still working. In John chapter 11, we see this truth in the story of Lazarus. Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus that their brother Lazarus was sick. They knew Jesus had the power to heal, and they expected Him to come immediately, but Jesus delayed, and by the time He arrived, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. Martha met Jesus and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Can you imagine the disappointment and confusion she must have felt? She had trusted Jesus, and it seemed like He had let her down, but Jesus responded with something that changed everything. "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die." Jesus went on to raise Lazarus from the dead, demonstrating His power over life and death. What seemed like a hopeless situation, a deep valley of grief, turned into a moment of miraculous victory. God's timing may not always align with our expectations, but His purposes are always good. The valley you're walking through right now may feel like it's never going to end, but I want to encourage you to trust in God's timing. He sees the bigger picture. He knows what you need, and He's working everything together for your good. As it says in Romans chapter 8, verse 28, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him. Your valley is not the end. It's a chapter in the greater story God is writing in your life. As I bring this message to a close, I want to leave you with this final thought. God is with you in the valley, and He is for you. The valley may seem overwhelming, but the God who walks with you is greater than any obstacle you face. He is your good shepherd, guiding you through every trial, protecting you from every attack, and providing for you in every need. Don't lose heart. Don't give up. You are not walking this journey alone. As you keep your eyes on Him, you will find the strength to take one more step, to keep moving forward, and to trust that He is leading you to higher ground. The valley may be part of your journey, but it is not your final destination. And as you walk through it, you can have confidence that God is with you every step of the way. Are you in a valley right now? Take a step of faith today. Don't let the darkness of your current situation make you forget the light of God's promises. Lift your eyes to Him, cry out in prayer, and immerse yourself in His Word. Lean into His presence, surround yourself with godly community, and remember that His grace is sufficient. Trust that He's using this valley to refine and strengthen you, and believe that He is working all things for your good. You don't have to walk through this valley alone. God is with you, guiding, comforting, and empowering you. Hold on to His promises and take the next step forward, knowing that the breakthrough is coming. Your journey is not over, and the best is yet to come. Keep moving. God is leading you to victory.